This video is brought to you by PrizePicks. Over the weekend, the Cincinnati Bengals made one of the biggest moves, or the first big move of this draft week, which is trading their number 10 overall pick for Dexter Lawrence. And there were a lot of immediate reactions to this news as it developed because we didn't have the contract details at first. We heard that the 10 pick was involved in this trade in some capacity, but didn't know exactly how. But now we know all the details. Dexter Lawrence to Cincinnati, a straight up swap, Dexter Lawrence for the number 10 overall pick to the New York Giants, obviously. And then Dexter Lawrence signed a 1-year extension to his current deal. So if I am to believe what's been reported, that means Dexter Lawrence will be in Cincinnati for the next 3 years, with that third year being the extension year of 1 year, $28 million in new money, or maybe that money spread out through the entire contract. Either way, the Bengals made a big swing here for Dexter Lawrence. And a lot of people have a lot of different thoughts about this. Many people's first reaction, my first reaction to this news was that's too much, right? A first round pick, a top 10 pick for Dexter Lawrence feels like a lot. But maybe this is a hot take. Maybe this is going to be an unpopular opinion. But I don't think this trade is as bad as the internet has made it seem. And I think there's a lot of factors that you have to consider, right? On the surface, a top 10 pick for a team that can draft is a valuable asset. But keep in mind, Cincinnati cannot draft. Duke Tobin has proven to be bad at this. Like, I think the reason, when I check in on what my Cincinnati people are saying about this trade and how they value it, the reason I don't think they're down on it isn't because they're homers. I think it's because they don't have faith in Duke Tobin anyways. So Dexter Lawrence is about as good as they could have hoped to get with that top 10 pick. A lot of Cincinnati fans had been hoping that Cincinnati would take, one of the more pro-ready prospects, right? Caleb Downs or somebody that it'd be hard to mess up because they just don't really have faith in that front office when it comes to drafting. And if you look at those drafts, especially on the defensive side for the Cincinnati Bengals, it's been brutal. I mean, some of the most brutal stuff you see. Yeah, I get it. It does seem like a lot. It does seem like a top 10 pick. It's too much for Dexter Lawrence. But I think my feeling about this has evolved. We'll talk more about this, but first, I got to thank my sponsor, PrizePicks. Hey, let me talk to you about my sponsor for this year, PrizePicks. It's a fun way to win cash while you're watching your favorite teams. Forget complex betting rules. Their app is designed to be incredibly easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. Speaking of, here are my picks for this upcoming NFL season. They have Myles Garrett at 14 sacks here. I think he will get more than 14 sacks. Joe Burrow at 3,875 passing yards. I think he'll be a 4,000-yard passer. I'm going to go with more. They have Derrick Henry at 1,224 yards. I'm going to go less than that. Check to see if PrizePicks is available in your state. You can follow me on the app at KWEN_C to see all of my lineups. Download the PrizePicks app today. Play $5 and get $50 in lineups when you download the app using the link in the description. Now, again, I get why people are criticizing this deal on face value. Dexter Lawrence is, 28 years old? So he's about in his prime. A lot of people don't value defensive tackle. I think one of the things we have learned throughout the last couple of off seasons is that defensive tackle is a premium position now, and front offices view it as such. I mean, look at the money that both the Super Bowl participants are spending at defensive tackle. Look at the money that a lot of teams spent. The Philadelphia Eagles spent at defensive tackle, and now Cincinnati spending money at defensive tackle. And I get why Cincinnati would spend that money at defensive tackle. Because if you look at Cincinnati, right, when they were making those Super Bowl runs, a lot of attention went to Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. But really, what I felt like gave Cincinnati the ability to make those runs was their defense during those 2 seasons, right, where they went to back-to-back conference championship games. They had a really good defense led by Lou Anarumo. They had Trey Henderson on that defensive line. And most importantly, they had DJ Reader, who was a game breaker when he was in Cincinnati at the defensive tackle position. And I remember saying this at the time when they lost DJ Reader, that's going to be a huge, huge loss for the Cincinnati Bengals. Defensive tackle is a premium position, whether people want to accept it or not. I know it's not a position that gets a ton of sacks. I know people are going to look at this like, oh, Dexter Lawrence, he only had half a sack last year. How valuable can he be? But, if we know how good Dexter Lawrence is at that 3 technique position. He's had a long time of being an all-pro caliber player. We know that we don't have to be slaves to the stats with Dexter Lawrence. Like, his reputation speaks for itself. And if he can be that DJ Reader level difference maker, I think that's going to do a lot for Shamar Stewart, who they drafted last year. I think that's going to do a lot for their linebackers that they invested 2nd and 3rd round picks in last year. I think that's going to really do a lot to elevate this defense overall because they were so weak on the line of scrimmage last year. And if you look at Cincinnati's biggest problems, they're on that line of scrimmage. See, Cincy's biggest issue has been for the last couple of years the fact that defense, and specifically that defensive line, has not been a threat. So using that 10th overall pick to get a better defensive tackle than you probably could have gotten in this draft class, which is not strong at defensive tackle, I don't know if that's that bad, especially when you look at Cincinnati's situation, right? They're a win now team. They're in a win now window. They have a win now quarterback. They have everything figured out offensively. The offensive line in Cincinnati is finally decent. The wide receivers are good. They have good tight ends. They have a great quarterback. They have everything that they want. Zach Taylor's still running the offense, but hey, look, they seem okay with that. And to be fair to Zach Taylor, like, as much criticism as he gets out of Cincinnati, those offenses have been good the last couple of years, right? Like, nobody can really deny that with multiple different quarterbacks playing, right? Jake Browning had a nice little run a couple years ago. Joe Flacco had a nice run last year, and then the same with Joe Burrow. So, as much as we like to joke and dunk on Zach Taylor for I think deserved reasons, he's been able to produce good offenses. That defense has been what hasn't given them a chance the last couple of years. You address that defense, they should be a contender to win the division with this Dexter Lawrence signing. I think this makes more sense than people want it to. You add in the fact that we talked about earlier. Cincinnati's bad at drafting. So, like, how valuable was that top 10 pick to Cincinnati? If you were a team that had confidence in drafting, maybe you have more value in that top 10 pick because maybe you think you could squeeze more out of it. But look at the factors in this draft and tell me if you think Duke Tobin was going to crush it in the draft this year, right? Like, the draft is not that good this year. It's not super top heavy. There's not going to be a obvious choice available to Duke Tobin that's going to be like ready to help this team right now. Is Dexter Lawrence this year going to be better than anybody they could have drafted at 10? And I think that matters for a team like Cincinnati more than it matters for a team like Cleveland. Like, Cleveland's not really drafting to be great this year. Cleveland is drafting to be great in a couple of years. So the year one impact is not that important to Cleveland. But for a team like Cincinnati, who's in that win now window, has their quarterback, is ready to go, right? They care a lot more about that year one impact than Cleveland does. And who in this draft is going to be more impactful in year 1, 2, or 3 than Dexter Lawrence that the Bengals could have gotten at 10? There's not that many people I could think of. So, yeah, it's an expensive price to pay, but, this isn't really a traditional top 10 pick in a draft that's top heavy, right? Like, this isn't what we think of when we think of top 10 pick. Hell, we're picking at 6, and we've been saying all draft season that Cardinal Tate would be a great pick at 16, but he doesn't really make sense at 6. But that's just kind of how the way the draft is lined up. Same thing with Monroe Freeling, right? Like, we're already putting a curve on this draft of about 10 picks. So if Cincinnati would have traded pick 20 instead of pick 10 for Dexter Lawrence, are we really like in the same uproar about this trade? I don't think so. I think the trade makes a lot more sense when you look at it from that perspective. And that's honestly the perspective that Cincinnati had to be looking at to make this trade. As far as the money goes, I don't think the money's that bad. Like, the $28 million in new money on top of what he was already getting, you have him under contract until 2031. Well, not 2031, the next 3 seasons. So 2026, 27, 28. So you have him under contract until the 2029 offseason. That's 3 years with him. He'll be about 31 at that point. Again, Cincinnati's just in a completely different window than Cleveland. So, like, the way that they're going to look at contracts is going to be a lot different than how Cleveland does. But also, like, another thing that I'll give the Bengals credit for, and I didn't expect to roll into this video giving the Bengals a ton of credit, but one of the things we've criticized Cincinnati for from the outside looking in is their lack of making bold moves to get better right now, right? Cincinnati has kind of been, along with Pittsburgh, one of the teams that are just too invested in maintaining the status quo, and not willing to shake up anything to the status quo to make that happen. And using that 10th pick for Dexter Lawrence, that's a shake up to the status quo. That's a bold move. It's one that they're going to be heavily criticized for by a lot of people, because people are going to look at that draft pick and say, oh my God, he gave that up for a 28-year-old defensive tackle. But I think that's one of the pieces that Cincinnati needed the most. Now, they could have avoided all of this and just paid Trey Henderson his money and paid DJ Reader a couple of years ago, and they could have been fine, right? They wouldn't be in this situation today if they would have just maintained the defense that they had a couple of years ago and weren't cheap about it. Obviously, the Cincinnati Bengals are not above criticism. The reason they're in this position to have to trade for Dexter Lawrence is because Duke Tobin is bad at his job. Is because Zach Taylor's not the greatest coach in the world. Is because the Cincinnati Bengals as an organization are cheap. But if we're just looking at the circumstances that the Cincinnati Bengals are dealing with, I can't really be mad at this trade. Right? Like, I think this makes a lot of sense for a team in the position that Cincinnati is in. Now, second part of this is about the Giants. What does this do to the Browns' ability to trade back? What does this say about the Browns' value at pick 6? And me personally, I think this one was the final splash in the face about the reality of the value that the Browns can get out of pick 6 when it comes to a trade back. If you have been hoping that the Browns were going to get a haul, and when I say a haul, like, I'm not just talking like the future first round pick stuff for pick 6 has been unrealistic for a very long time, right? But even when I say a haul, I'm like, if you think the Browns are going to get an extra second, you know, like a huge haul in this year's draft or something like that for pick 6, I would lower your expectations. The fact that the Bengals were able to value that 10th pick for Dexter Lawrence kind of gives the game away about what top 10 picks are worth in this year's draft class. And the answer is it's not that much, right? Especially this year. Last year, the Browns were able to kind of turn number 2 into a big haul for them, which was a surprise, given that like number 2 wasn't going to be a quarterback, right? Usually a quarterback has to be involved for you to get a big haul, but the Browns were able to do it with Travis Hunter. Okay, cool. This year, I don't think the Browns are going to be able to manufacture that kind of leverage. One, I think teams are going to be willing to sell a lot cheaper to let teams jump the Cleveland Browns and what the Browns are willing to give up 6 for. And 2, I just don't think 6 is worth what we want it or what the Cleveland Browns are going to want it to be worth in order to make a trade back make sense for them, because the Browns are probably going to want more swings at the apple, right? They're probably going to want an extra pick within the top 70, I'm guessing, in order to move back from 6. And I don't think they're going to get that. I don't think anybody's going to value it at that. And I think this kind of trade here, where the Bengals are basically valuing that number 10 pick more like a number 20 pick, right, for this Dexter Lawrence trade, kind of gives up the game of like, hey, don't look at this like a number 6 overall pick this year. You should look at this like a number 16 overall pick, because that's kind of how the rest of the league is treating that situation. So that's the part about this that's tough, right? Now, could the Browns trade back with the Giants at 10? Maybe, but why in the world would the Giants trade up? They picked before Cleveland at 5, and they're going to be able to get whoever they want at 5. They already have their quarterback. Why would they trade up with Cleveland to get 6? Don't think it makes a ton of sense. I think this trade is the one that makes me realize I don't think the Browns are going to be able to make a trade back. Maybe I'm wrong here. Or if the Browns are able to make a trade back, they're moving back way, way further than we really thought they would. Because maybe they're trading like that pick out of this draft entirely to punt it into next year. But I don't think they're going to be able to make the kind of move that they did last year, the kind of maneuver they did last year. I don't think that's going to be available to them, or anything resembling that. We'll see what happens. Thursday is going to be here soon enough. I'll be live streaming during it, so make sure you check it out. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.